Okay, I would like to call to order the Village of Lansing Planning Board meeting of Monday, September 11th, 2023 to order at 7:01 PM. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We've got one, August 29th, 2023. I know people chimed in with some comments. Anything else anybody wanted to add or change?
No,
Okay.
go ahead.
If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the August 29, 2023.
Motion by Jim.
Second.
And by Lorraine, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, yep.
I can't seem to get video, but I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Okay.
For
So
the
motion
record?
still, okay, you and Jim both, or you and Pat both, rather.
Okay. I don't know why my camera, oh, I do know why.
Okay, well, let us know if you have anything to say, since I can't, oh, there you go.
Yeah, you have to take your sticky off the camera. Okay,
Hey, who seconded that, Mike?
Lorraine did. So motion by Jim, second by Lorraine. Okay, next item on the agenda is the public comment period. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to bring anything up that's not already on the agenda for tonight.
I'm Carla Marceau. I'm here as an observer for the community party.
Hey, Carla. I know usually Susan beats you to the punch usually, so.
I'm actually Drew Reed on the board of communities.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the public comment period. Motion by Pat,
I'll second.
second by Jim, all in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is planning board review of a tree cutting at 4 and 8 Dart Drive. Simon Gould, representing Habitat for Humanity of Tompkins and Cortland Counties, has applied for a building permit for 4 Dart Drive, tax parcel number 46.1-1-6.28, and 8 Dart Drive, tax parcel number 46.1-1-6.27. Both parcels will require approximately 40% of the existing trees to be removed as per Village Code Section 14527B. Planning board review is required if more than 25% by number of trees are removed from any tax parcel within a 3-year period. So we did talk about this at the last meeting, and Mike, did you want to provide an update? I know that we have some new information back from that group. You're muted still.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to send somebody else a link here. First of all, I, from going through the minutes, I owe Shannon an apology. I said McCormick instead of McCarrick, and I greatly apologize. I'm very sorry about that.
No.
You have in front of you, from Simon and Shannon, you have a proposed tree planting plan for both 4 and 8. I think they're both very smartly done, but they were proactive and went ahead and sent this into you, and this could be part of the approval as far as a planning plan for them cutting down approximately 37% of the trees on the property.
And so we had discussed this last time. I know a few of the board members weren't present, so we didn't make any decision at the last meeting, but we did talk about the existing number of trees that would be removed, the remainder of the trees that would be on that property, and we had also asked if they would consider putting some street trees along the way. So I think that is what we have in front of us here. So Simon or Shannon, did either of you want to mention anything? A couple of the board members might have questions, but I'll give you the floor first if you have anything to say.
No, I think Mike covered everything. Hopefully that plan addresses the questions about planting along the street front. I picked smaller, sort of medium-sized trees so they don't get too big in front of the house.
Questions or comments from board members? Lisa?
I guess I might be missing, I have because I've been away, this is the August 10th, and this showed the trees, but are we still talking about putting street trees along where the future sidewalk might go or not?
Mike, do you want to, can you pull those images up on the screen so that folks can see them?
Thank you. Sorry to backtrack on some of this stuff.
No, you're good, and that did remind me, there was a question, and maybe it was by you, Lisa, I'm not sure, but there was a question about, right, there is going to be a sidewalk there at some point, and wanting to make sure that this
Yeah.
wouldn't, the planting of these trees wouldn't
Oh, I see.
put us in
No,
a situation, yeah.
I have the original things. I just don't have these red overlays on the
Okay.
plans that okay, so these are the street trees. I see. And yeah, I mean, there's an also, well, I just wanted to be sure when, as you and I have spoken, I know that there's been a sidewalk plan for some time, but eventually it will happen. And I just want to be sure that any trees that are planted don't have to be removed or something at a future time, but can accommodate any future sidewalk. And obviously, street trees, you have to be sure they don't interfere with traffic and all that good stuff. But I see, so I didn't have these red overlays somehow. Okay,
So Lisa, this is 8 dart. And then you have, this would be 4 dart.
okay, so it's just a nice continuity.
And I drew the trees behind, there's already an easement along Dot Drive, so I drew the trees past the easement is where the sidewalk's gonna go there.
Oh, good, okay, that was my only concern because
Yeah,
Right.
I'm really pleased that you're agreeable to having street trees. They only make it nicer for everyone.
Any other questions or comments from the board about that?
My question that I had when I looked at it was that, just the species, it's Japanese red maple and white dogwoods. Are we asking them to put in street trees, shade trees? Japanese maples tend to be pretty small, so they're not gonna give shade.
Yeah, I don't think we had talked necessarily about shade trees just so much as, adding some, I think if you look at the rest of the, the tree planting piece, I'm not sure that when we had talked about, and maybe you can find it quick, Natalie.
Yeah, or
When we talked about street trees, I don't think it specified anything to do with shade.
Okay, because street trees generally tend to be a little bit bigger unless they happen to be under wires. If they're under wires, then clearly we put in the smaller species, but when it's a street tree, tends to be more of a shade tree. So I don't know if there was any sort of thought towards that at all.
Do you remember any part of that discussion, Lisa?
No, I don't. I just, does Yumila have, I mean, Yumila is way more experienced about this sort of thing. Do you have any suggestions, Yumila?
But honestly, like, you that one had, what, 3 Japanese maples and a single white dogwood. The dogwood's great, but the dogwood likes to be kind of at the edge of a kind of a forest area, so it likes a little bit of shelter. So it's gonna be really exposed there, it's not gonna do as well. So maybe swap out one of the Japanese maples for something that's a little bit, that's gonna be more robust over the years. So instead of the Japanese maples, like a red maple, or any of our oak species that we tend to grow around here that will eventually put on some more mass.
So I'm just looking at the street tree portion, not that it technically applies to this, but just to give some insight as to what we're looking for street trees. And it was 1 street tree per 40 feet of frontage, and just that they be horticulturally appropriate for use in street frontage areas, not impede traffic vision and not impede utilities or drainage easements. So shade trees weren't necessarily contemplated when talking about street trees.
Mike, Brett has his hand up.
Yep, go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, didn't know that that's what Natalie was going to read, but I was going to suggest that from a public works perspective, not that that's the only consideration, but usually smaller is better for interference with either traffic or utilities.
Yeah, so I'm fine. Like, Yumila is definitely more of an expert here, so maybe take her comments into advice about swapping one of the trees out to protect it and give it a longer life, but beyond that,
Yeah, no one comes beyond that.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna swap something out, consider swapping the one out that's nearest the drive, because Japanese maples are notoriously sensitive to salt. So if you're gonna be salting your drive, maybe swap that one out. But, you know, go to one of our local great nurseries, and they'll be able to give you some really good advice about which ones to put there.
Shannon?
No, thanks for the advice. We're happy to make some swaps. And I was going to say, we have a couple of nice connections with a couple of growers and landscaping companies and things. And I'm sure that if we go to them, they can help us source and also, you know, pick what's best and where and all that. So we've got plenty of time to do that before spring. We can certainly do that.
So do we want to, so this isn't a special permit approval, there's no resolution for this is just a verbal, you know, yes, because because you are, cutting down more than 25% by number, you have to get planning board approval. You can approve that with, the condition that appropriate trees are planted, in the areas they've identified on the plans that they've provided, or if people want to, we can wait for them to come back and tell us exactly what kind of trees they're, putting in those areas. I'm comfortable with the fact that they're putting trees in those, along the street in those seven areas. But what other people think?
If they seek some advice from one of the local growers, make sure the trees are protected, I'm good with that.
Any other comments?
I agree.
Okay, with that then, I would entertain a motion to,
I would
unless
say
you have something.
approve the cutting proposed on, what was this, 4 and 8 Dart Drive, not requiring any money to be paid into the tree bank in exchange for the planting of trees as shown on the planting plans provided.
I'll entertain a motion to, there you go.
Move that.
Motion by Jim.
Second.
I'm sorry, Pat, wow, yeah. Sorry, I almost got you on that one. Second by Lorraine.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Simon,
I will-
Shannon, thank you.
I will also put it on the building permit as a condition.
Good.
Just
Great. Okay,
Thank you very much.
great, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is to continue the public hearing for the final plat of cluster subdivision proposal number 2021-4464 by Beer Properties LLC. Beer Properties LLC and Hunt Engineers are providing a final plat of a cluster subdivision for property parcel number 45.2-1-47.2, which consists of approximately 40 acres of vacant land located between Craft Road and Bush Lane. Final plat, along with details of proposed duplex lots, will be reviewed by the planning board. Mike, did you want to kick us off? It's been a while, I know, since you were here, so thanks for coming back. Excited to have you back with, some updated stuff. I know that you've been working with Mike and John and Dondi, so Mike, why don't you kick us off?
Well, what I can say is David dropped this off to me last week. We were able to take a look at it. I sent it over to John Courtney and Dondi Harner and Brent Cross to take a look and make sure, put a final eye on it, that it was everything on there that they had talked about, because I wasn't in every one of the engineering meetings. There was some discussion over emails today with John, Brent, and Dondi about some items on there. Basically, Dondi Harner came up with a red line marking on the site plan, and we sent it back over to David Beers and Tim Sneed, and it had some decent sized changes that needed to be done. It wasn't like all out moving of anything. It was just a matter of what land was dedicated to the village, what land was going to have easements. There are still some items that need to be worked out, but we are 98% there at this point. What I'd like to see out of this actual meeting is to have the planning board refamiliarize themselves with this, because it's been quite a while. We've had other We've had other proposals, other special permits, so they're everything, so it's kind of been out of your minds. So if you have questions, or you have, not so much requests, because we're pretty much done with changing things around, but for example, I'd like you to find out, what are you gonna do with the sidewalks on the loop road? What is, just so everyone's on the same page, I want to make sure, for example, the entrance exit that would be going over to Lansing Trails 3, is that going to be put into an escrow? I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with this. And in hopes that once everything has been changed over the next couple weeks, that we can come back here next week with some paperwork, with a resolution, and see if we can't get David moving along.
Okay. David, do you want to, anything you want to tell us? I'm sure there's some questions from the board, but.
Well, I don't have much to say. The lot layouts have really not changed at all. I mean, there may have been a tweak here or there to accommodate a storm sewer line or a sewer line that had to move a few feet one way or another. But the general layout is the same thing you saw a year and a half ago. And, from a planning board perspective, I would think that there's not much new here. We do have to iron out these details about the, just where some easements are going to be laid in terms of access to stormwater facility and stuff like that. And that has to be done. But beyond that, it's not really changed from earlier versions.
Yeah. Questions from board members? Lisa?
So we're talking about the 35 sites there's 35 duplexes and 8 townhouses are single units. I've honestly forgotten. So the total is what, 78 housing units? Is that correct? I was thinking it was more for some reason. There's 75, or there's 35 times 2, the 70, and then there's 8 townhouses. Is that correct?
The townhouses, I believe, are kind of one structure spanning 2 lots, each structure having 4 units.
Oh, okay, because I thought originally there was 80 some odd housing units.
I thought it was 84.
That's what I thought too, okay. And I couldn't, and I'm looking at the plans and that's how far back it seems to me. Okay, so it is 84 still, right?
I believe so, yes.
And then in terms of the loop road sidewalk that you mentioned, Mike Scott, are we talking about, I thought that what we had agreed was that perhaps it didn't need to be put in at this time. Is that what I'm recalling? If we're talking about what I'm thinking about is the actual kind of horseshoe shape, but enough land or easements or whatever you call it should be allowed for a future sidewalk to be installed.
Yeah, that was discussed in some earlier minutes.
Right.
It was brought up whether you actually needed one in there, whether you're going to have an escrow for some, or whether you were just going to make sure there was enough land in the easement so that in the future, if any were ever wanted to put in, or you found that were necessary, they could be put in.
And our sidewalk plan doesn't really tell us, does it? Or does it?
Doesn't tell you what.
Which way to go with that? Does it? Does the
No,
sidewalk?
it leaves the choice up to you.
Right. Okay, thank you.
At one point too, there was also discussion of, and I think everything kind of focused on the loop piece there, right, were there gonna be sidewalks? At one point in an earlier plan, there was like a path that went through, I think that was maybe more of that,
Middle.
yeah, like through the middle and kind of the backyards of the houses there.
Well, that doesn't appear on the plat.
Right.
But that is still envisioned in that, but that would be an HOA owned or maintained
Okay.
piece. And I remember the sidewalk discussion, kind of as Lisa does, that the land was to be arranged so that it could accommodate sidewalks. I don't recall any discussion of, putting money in escrow in case within a short period of years, it was decided they needed to be installed. That just wasn't, I don't recall that being discussed at all. Just that the easements and lot lines be arranged to accommodate.
Questions from anyone else? Or comments? Like I said, I know most of it does look, yeah, like it hasn't really changed much. I know, like you said, there are some minor tweaks just to accommodate, more public works things and utilities that you were working with John and Donnie on, so.
But getting back to the other thing that Mike mentioned, which is the entrance exit to Lansing Trails 3 or whatever. That's on the east side, southeast side.
It's on the south side.
Kind of near the townhouses.
Yep, just before you make that turn. Now, that was mentioned, David had said, okay, we could put that in, it would be great for turnaround and whatnot, and I think the conversation went, John Courtney really wasn't interested in having that turnaround, so the last I remember that being left was that area would not be put in, but that would have an escrow for that area to be put in.
Yeah, I think that's probably more important to be thinking about than from my perspective, because, the loop road is pretty much the development itself. It's just going to be the people that live there. Although we do know that people will speed even in their own neighborhood. So I'm a little more concerned about this one. But it's hard to predict when that attachment might become necessary. So I don't know how that works quite with escrows. How do you just keep them forever until it happens?
Well, and
You might as well build it.
well, and how fair is that, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yep. All right, so the current plan, it looks like, is that connection won't be put there, but when phase 3 or whatever it is, whatever phase they decide to number it comes through, that's when it would connect down there, or at least the discussion would be brought up again. So I don't know.
I mean, it could be handled a number of ways, either the escrow's for a term of year and then it's put in by the end of that term, not necessarily to coincide with the development of the next phase, but just if John doesn't need it now, but in X years' time, it has to be put in. You can phrase it that way. I mean, there's a lot of ways that you could manage that, and I can work with Ray and to figure out what we think would be equitable there, rather than just hold it in perpetuity.
Right.
That doesn't seem fair.
That sounds better to me.
Does anyone know, the Lansing Trails 3 development, I'm not at all familiar with it, but it seems to be moving along in the other portions.
Yeah.
Do the developers intend to start on that northern portion of their parcel anytime soon?
I haven't heard.
Yeah, but you're right that they are, I would say, over the next year or two, we'll probably be completing, probably the next year, we'll be completing the area that they're developing now.
Moving fast.
They are moving fast, yeah, and then, right, that, the next portion, that's on the kind of map here that would, about this project, that is the last phase of that project. Whether they move forward with that or not, in a timely manner or at all, we don't know that yet, yeah.
You guys don't.
Yeah.
Haven't heard.
No, yeah, definitely haven't heard anything, unless you've heard something, Mike.
I have, but it's,
Yeah.
like I said, it's all hearsay, so who knows?
One thing I have seen people do with step outs like that is, they've put them in, they've put down the asphalt, and then they've used them for something else for some period of time, so, you know, a couple of backboards and basketball courts, or it's, you know, a little, like, you know, you paint in a little trail for like kids to be on bicycles, or something that's an amenity for the people who are there. And then what ends up happening is that at some point, if you do have to complete that, then you do complete it and you connect to the other road, and if you don't complete it, you have an amenity for the people who live there.
Nothing against that, Yamila, but I've also seen one of those things you put in there and everybody just throw their junk there.
Yep, they've also collected lots of trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you do put it in there and you're not using it, then it's a problem, but if you put it in there and you program it as an amenity for your HOA, then it actually becomes a really nice thing to have for, you know, the next 3 to 5 years. And of course, that means that it's a question of your financing. You know, is asphalt going to cost more to put in 5 years, or is it going to be cheaper to do it now while everything's mobilized?
I suspect once a, you know, half mile of asphalt is being laid, or a couple hundred more yards isn't going to, you know, it would be economically more beneficial to do it all at the same time.
Mhm.
But it was John Courtney that didn't want to see, you know, a T-intersection dog leg there, so, you know, that's what drove the current drop.
Right.
Now, if you put up some kind of barricades so that it's not a road, then, you know, John agrees with that, I suppose.
Well, I hope to have one more meeting with John and David and Tim and Dondi and Brent. We can ask John what he wants to do with that, if that's okay with you, David, and then, you know, come back to the next meeting when we try to finalize this and let them know John's opinion on it.
Yeah, I would like to hear more what the issue is exactly, because, you know, what's point, it's, I mean, I think from some past experiences, when you don't put your roads in, sometimes then they don't happen. So we want to be sure that the connection is going to be there.
And honestly, the same thing holds true for sidewalks. If you don't put them in when you're mobilizing and doing the construction, it becomes much more disruptive and more expensive to do them later.
For the loop, you mean, you're thinking of the loop road?
Yeah, for anywhere there are supposed to be sidewalks.
Well, can we, like, if we're talking about sidewalks again, can we not leave something like that hanging and either decide that you're, you know, gonna go along with what was said a year and a half ago about there leaving space for sidewalks but not requiring them, or do something completely different, be very specific about what you want.
Yep. Brent, go ahead, you have a comment.
My comment goes back to the stub over to Lansing Trails 3. I also too want to talk to John, because I want to think about when is the timing of the dedication of the land. And if that is now or in the near future, then it might seem to be messy to have David do the paving, you know, many years in the future. So I know that there's been a little creativity in the past, and I'm not suggesting that that's what should happen here, but, you know, if it were to not get paved now, but dedicated to the village, and the village had some obligation to install that in the future, just because it's now, 10 years in the future, 5 years in the future, it belongs to the village, that there be some kind of trade-off with whatever's going on at the project now. So I'll take the responsibility to have that conversation with John and just make sure that we understand what his needs are.
So back to the sidewalk discussion around the loop, and I agree with, David, that I think we're down to the wire. It seems, at least from the discussions tonight, there's, only two things that the board has questions about, and, one of them is that kind of stub there, and we'll see what, see if we can get a hold of John to have some more, conversations about that. And then sidewalks, and so, I agree, I think, with some of the comments that you made, David, and also Lisa too, about, that really is more of a kind of, hopefully, private area. It does, you're not gaining anything by using that as a through road, because it's not a through road. Where you enter it at the four-way there, you're gonna end up the same way. I would love to, definitely have things engineered so that a sidewalk could be put in there in the future if, it is necessary. Maybe that's because of, Lansing Trails down below at some point, or maybe it's just because of traffic or flow or whatever reason, but have it there. But if there's a path through there, I think for the people, in that area to walk on, at least to get, so that they're not on the road. And like you mentioned, an HOA owned and maintained pathway, I'm comfortable with that approach. I'll let other people chime in though too with what their thoughts are.
Are you talking about a path between the buildings or a path around?
Yeah, I'll say the backyards between the buildings, so not a sidewalk around the loop, but a pathway through the backyards, kind of like what you see in Lansing Trails 1. There's a path through there that's used, and it's beautiful, it's very nice, and it's, it doesn't interfere with anybody's backyards, and it's a nice place to walk and not be on the street.
Well, of course, that doesn't address the outside,
But I think it gives the residents a safe place to walk, though, if they're not, or bike or whatever, if they're not comfortable being on the street. The option would be there if there was a path. It's not like we're, forcing residents to walk on the street there.
Would it be accessible?
What's that?
Would we ask that that be accessible?
Oh, accessible handicapped accessible, you mean?
Yeah, I would say even if it is owned by the HOA, that, it's designed in a fashion that it's, accessible for the people who live there.
I guess
or accessible in general.
Are we talking about handicap accessible on the paved surface? Because that's not something that's ever been discussed.
Well, and
surfacing of the HOA trails.
Yeah, we've talked about it before in some of the meetings. It doesn't necessarily have to be paved in order to be accessible. Okay. And because some of the other paths, this discussion came up with accessibility too, and I think people brought up some of the stone dust and things like that, I don't recall, but like in Millcroft, right up above that, they're not paved, but.
Well, let me back up a little bit. There are many trails in the development. So there are greenway trails, which long ago we consented that they should be paved and wide enough for John Courtney to run his snowplow down. And so those are paved in asphalt and wide. And then there are sidewalks, which are 5 feet wide and concrete, which I believe the village is supposed to maintain. I think the village maintains all the sidewalks in the village. And then there are HOA trails, which are HOA owned and maintained. And as far as I'm aware, there's no specification as to their construction.
Correct. However, once you think that people who live in the HOA or live in the neighborhood who might have accessible needs should be able to use the HOA path. I mean, if you say it's 1 foot wide and it's, thick bark and they can't use that for some reason, I don't think that that's this is my personal, I don't think that that's a good approach for the people who would be living in that neighborhood.
No, I understand, but this is all about defining what's going to exist. And the HOA trails, I think, are outside of the scope of this review. So what actually is out there, I don't know. But
could I ask another question? So because we're talking about a trail that will go, as I understand it, basically through that U, east to west, people that are on the outside of the horseshoe, would there be areas where they could go through somebody else's yard, so to speak, have access paths to get to that path if they wanted to use it?
Yeah, well, you can see on the drawing that the whole eastern side of the interior of the loop road is HOA space, green space. So the path would traverse that area, you know, to the road in one or more locations. And then on the west side, similarly, it would connect to, now I can't remember whether we have concrete sidewalk right there or not, but it would go right to the street.
At no
Well,
cost.
but what I'm thinking of is
Broadway extension.
Right.
if I'm in the middle, and it's so hard to talk about these things without having, okay, so let's say I'm in townhouse number 5, and I would like to go down the road, but I think, geez, I really don't want to go down the road. I'd like to go to the middle, up to the path between 23 and 22 and get to the path. Or let's say I'm farther down. Well, I guess you just go down to the end of the road, huh?
Yeah.
There, I think those lots are tight. Well, I haven't thought about any accesses between those lots.
Yeah,
So-
okay.
So as it stands now, people would have to walk to the east side or the west side.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up, Mike.
Thanks. Yeah,
The picture.
1,000 words. Okay. Well,
I think,
so,
yeah, there's, I was gonna say, I think there's flexibility in how it's handled, but the goal is that the people who live there have a safe way to move around. And a
exactly.
safe and accessible way, because it's not just people in wheelchairs, somebody like, you know, getting knee surgery and has that little corridor, is bringing a stroller. Accessibility is important. So as long as there's some way that people can get around easily from their home around the neighborhood, then I think that's fine, however you want to do it, whether it's this path between the houses, or it's a sidewalk, or it's a combination. Maybe the townhouses all need to have a sidewalk in front of them, because they can't get to that other path, but all the other houses can access that path pretty easily, so then they have a safe way. So there's a few different things that you can think about, but as long as paramount, people have safe, accessible pathways where they can get from point A to point B, that's really what matters.
Okay, but I would just say one thing, is that, you know, people are walking in the street on Janivar and Lease Way all the time.
Sure.
And those are much busier streets than I imagine this closed loop road would ever be.
And if that development were being built now, we would be having the same discussion about sidewalks with them.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
you're absolutely correct.
So,
Yep.
so there's that, and then, you know, as the property owner, for sure, I would not want to have any facility that would be considered a hazard to the occupants. That's just, doesn't make sense. You can't have people tripping. So, you know, it's not gonna be, and HOA trails will not be rugged trails. But committing to them being paved at this point is.
And I'm, like I said, I wasn't proposing that, nope. But making sure, right, that there's a safe way, like Yamila mentioned, a safe way for the residents there to move around. As the property owner, I would imagine that should always be the goal, like you said, so. Yeah, I mean, does anyone, you know, have, you know, Lisa or anyone here, does anyone have a desire to, you know, require sidewalks or require something in that area, one way or the other than to leave, you know, if you want to put sidewalks in for that safe movement for the residents, great. If you intend to do that with a path down the middle, also, okay, as long as there's some method of movement through them for that. Does anyone have any strong opinion one way or the other?
No, Mr. Beer mentioned that he didn't think this would be busy. I haven't walked there for years, but periodically we'll drive through, I guess it's Lansing Trails too. And I've never seen very much traffic. Usually I'm the only car, or I might see one other one, so. I think, you know, leaving it open-ended, I don't have a problem with.
Right?
You know, honestly, my only concern is I'm thinking of the issue that was raised by the East Point people who have speeding problems within their own complex. That's my only hesitation, honestly, because, but it's just the one section that we're talking about, and I think as long as it's something that I think might be necessary in the future, but I assume that David Beer will come and say, yeah, or figure it out that, yeah, to keep his residents safe, the sidewalk is necessary on the loop road, but I do want path to be demonstrated. There should be some other alternative at the moment, but other than that, I'm comfortable at the moment. I guess the real question was, did we want an escrow? And I just don't think that's feasible personally.
All right.
So since Lisa brought that up, I happen to live in that complex, and I know about the speeding, and it's ridiculous, and it's, the complex, it's a circle, it's pretty much like your loop, and people speed through there constantly. The worst offenders are the UPS drivers and the FedEx drivers, but people that live there speed, they've got speed bumps now at every corner. People fly right over them, and there's more families in the complex than there were the last few years, and it's dangerous. You know, kids are out on their bikes. I think your community, I'm kind of new to this, but I think this is 55 and up, is that correct? So you don't need to worry about kids unless they're grandkids, but but it is dangerous, and I see it all the time, and it's very upsetting, because even though people are warned over and over and over again, they go by so fast you can't even get a plate number.
But they're residents of the community, most likely. Or you said it's the UPS.
No, it's the residents and the food delivery people, the UPS drivers, the FedEx drivers, the Amazon drivers. Yeah, there's no stopping them. But yeah, the residents are pretty bad at this.
I know that, you know, you can put speed bumps in, and I also have heard more than once from John Courtney his aversion to any kind of traffic control measures, you know, because it makes it harder to maintain.
Yeah. Well, there are other things that can be done that are like, you can do neck downs at the edges to make people go into those spaces much more slowly. So there's you know, kind of smaller things that you can do engineering wise that really sends a signal that this is supposed to be a slow road. And some of it has to do with, like, you know, how your openings and exits of the space are. If you narrow those, you tend to slow people down throughout the whole thing.
It's late in the game, as far as I'm concerned, to start talking about changing, you know, the design of the street system here.
Yeah.
I think, well, so, and Lorraine had a chance, Pat, thoughts on requiring, you know, something one way or the other there, whether.
I'm fine with the path through the middle there, and if they want to leave space for sidewalks.
Yeah.
But I don't think sidewalks should be required.
Camila?
I mean, sidewalks make better neighborhoods, and especially if you're looking at, I didn't realize it was a 55 and over neighborhood. 55 and over, especially having people not have to walk in the street is a really good thing. People become better neighbors when they walk on the sidewalk next to each other. And it's a clearer space. You're gonna have more people with more mobility issues over the years there. I think it'd be a smart thing to put in the sidewalks, but we don't have if we don't have a policy on the books that says that you have to have them, we can't really demand that.
Well, I mean.
You can require they be put in or an escrow, or you can waive it, so it's kind of a dealer's choice type situation, but it has been quite some time that we have discussed not having a sidewalk on that road at the moment, so I do think at this point, that would be
too late to change that.
Unfair to David at this point to require that change.
I could absolutely see that.
Yeah.
What are the streets gonna be paved with, asphalt?
Yes.
I was gonna say something, but I won't.
So I think that, the sense that you get from the board members here is that, our primary concern is, safety for the residents there. I think that's what everyone's comments have kind of gone around. I think that, making sure that it's engineered, and I believe it is, right? It's engineered for future sidewalks now. I think the path through the middle, like I mentioned earlier, at least gives people a safe mode of transport through there if they aren't comfortable walking in the street or riding their bike in the street or whatever they're going to be doing in the street there. So, that's my opinion. I think, oh no, I thought Brent had his hand up. Never mind, he doesn't. That's his arm or something. But so, I would be comfortable really just focusing on what are we going to do about the kind of T intersection down there, and through your discussions with John and leaving the loop road up to you with what you do with it right now. I agree with Natalie and others. I don't think it's fair for, not knowing the future of that area, I don't think it's fair for us to ask, in this case, David or any developer, not knowing, more than a year or something out, to put money into an escrow that just sits there, and then what? So. Other than that, does anyone have questions or concerns about anything else on here?
Next time we look at one of these, though, can we get the full size?
Bigger. Mike will always get a big version for you if you want one.
There's one right over here.
Oh, is that?
He did tape that one there, in case people want to look at it.
My eyes struggle a little bit.
Hey, Mike, just to sum things up.
Yeah.
No sidewalks on the loop road, correct?
No sidewalks required by the planning board.
Okay.
On the loop road there on the east.
Would the planning board be comfortable when you're talking about that intersection that will lead to Lansing Trails 3? Would the planning board be comfortable with whatever decision that John comes up with, or the engineers come up with, when we have another meeting before our next meeting? Would the planning board be comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's.
I would like to actually hear what the concerns are about that, so we just know.
Well, if let's say John says, yep, let's pave it, and that's it. Can he give his explanation at the next meeting so that we can kind of move forward with things?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you'll get your explanation. I just want to make sure that we're taking a step in the right direction here to finalize this.
Yeah, I think it would be great if you all could have a conversation between now and the next meeting, and if John could come to the next meeting, just to, if there are, questions one way or the other, or concerns one way or the other from the planning board, that he could answer those there, as opposed to him not being there, us having concerns, us saying, okay, well, David, we'll talk to, John again in between this meeting and the next meeting, right? I think if John could be there, I think that would help.
Because I think if we have two goals here, and anybody can correct me if they want to, with the actual plat itself, we'll, like I had mentioned before, we'll get together, if that's okay with you, David, we'll get together and finalize everything. We're at a point where we should be able to do that at one meeting. And then at the same time, it would be nice if Natalie and Ray would get together and work on some type of resolution with conditions that they can, bring to the planning board. You two have been through this a lot more than everybody else has, so you would know what conditions need to go into that. And then kind of bring everything together here for the next meeting. If that would be a game plan, everybody would approve.
Yep. And that way you can move forward with what you need to, as the next step, and Mike's got a list of those, but it's kind of, really up to you to just meet the conditions on that, that we set forth. That way you don't have to keep coming back every time, okay, well, yes, I figured this out, now I can go, yeah.
I understand, but approval of the plat is a milestone.
Yep.
And I can't do anything until that happens.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, and I think that's what Mike's saying. I think if you all get together at the next meeting, we can get things, we can approve the plat. There'll obviously be conditions on it, but the plat would be approved given everything.
That would be great.
Okay. I feel like I should start reminding everybody every time. Start working on it as soon as you possibly can with Mike, because if we get it on the Monday before the Tuesday meeting, that doesn't give us enough time to go over stuff, and
sure.
Yeah.
Mr.
I'm not
Schlafly.
picking on you, I'm just picking on, we get late information all the time, and
Well, see, you
nobody
guys
likes
are-
it.
You guys are nice in that you have frequent meetings.
Yeah. Makes a big
There's
difference.
always a rush to meet the deadline, it's just.
Yes.
Got somebody waving their.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, Ray.
you're muted, Ray.
All right, thank you. And thank you for the discussion and the many helpful comments. Natalie and I have discussed this briefly, and we are both committed to hammering out all of the easement language and conditions and what done. So from that end, we ought to be able to get that done relatively quickly. Hopefully, when we meet, we will have something available. Our whole point was we just wanted to make sure that there aren't any other major hurdles that need to be addressed. And it's like we're all on the right page. If Natalie and I can write language and conditions, it looks like the approval is pending. Is that reasonable assumption?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, given your discussions and David's discussions with John and Mike, we could potentially be ready at the next meeting.
Good. All righty, thank you.
Thanks. Anything else, David?
No, that's it, thanks very much.
Feel free to stick around. No. Okay, next item on the agenda is the discussion of the solar array draft law. Do we want to start with the law first, or with the Village of Lansing solar permit, not to be confused with the unified solar permit? I know that, so everyone should have a printed copy of this in front of them. I know Pat sent this out, so thank you. You know. But it's definitely been, you know, rewritten Village of Lansing solar permit to be specific to, you know, our municipality here. I know some other things were cleaned up on it. Did anyone see anything that they had brought up before that didn't get updated and needed to be?
Oh, on Pat's, you mean? Oh, I didn't have time to read this, Pat. You
I was gonna say.
sent it late. I was like, oh, no, I can't have time.
It's a mess.
Computer down?
It was after 5. That was
Yeah.
like 5:15, maybe?
Was that today?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I have a house guest, so I haven't seen this.
Well,
Okay.
take a look and read over it. I read over it, and the things, at least that I recall we had talked about, got corrected on there. So take a look at it, and if there's other things, we can discuss over email and get them updated for the next meeting.
Oh, here it is, 511. Okay, thank you.
So moving on to the draft local law. There are some comments in there that I put in there and that Natalie put in there. That's, I think we can just kind of discuss, and then we can update for this. I didn't want to just commit some of these things in there, and some of them were more questions, you know, some of it's cleaning up, oh, you know, remove this here, delete that, that's fine, but there were some things that Natalie had questions about. So on, I'm gonna say page, I don't know if there's an actual, yeah, there is page 155, so it's really the third page. That's where you start to see some of the comments that Natalie had in there. I don't know if you want to go over.
Can I just ask before you get to there?
Yeah.
Under general requirements on page 154,
You're gonna say unified solar permit?
what is, because I didn't get the thing until, and now I just closed out. What is the actual name of what we're calling our permit?
Village of Lansing solar permit. And yes, I realize that there is,
Okay.
there is under general condition, or under definitions, there's one place where it says unified solar permit that needs to be fixed.
It's an A.
Okay,
Oh, yeah, there it is, yeah.
okay, so, okay, yeah, that was my question, is I just thought, what's our actual name at this point? Okay, good. Okay, now we're on page 155.
Yes. Do you want to start?
I mean, mostly, I tried to, Mike couldn't make heads or tails of my handwritten notes.
Some of it
so
I could. It wasn't
don't
all
blame you, 'cause
handwriting, it was some
took me a while
handwriting.
to figure out what some of them meant.
Oh, good, okay.
I mean, I think number 1 is self-explanatory, and I think we talked about that just reads awkwardly. So it needs to be reincorporated or rephrased somehow.
Yep.
The biggest thing, to make it its own, I think that the 18 months of issuance should kind of be made more prominent and modeled after the model law for a period, just kind of beef it up a little bit and take it out of this general requirements section. Is that where it's in?
Yeah.
I think it could kind of just be made to stand on its own a little bit more, to make it, one, stand out more, and just to be able to add a little bit more detail into it. That was just a suggestion that I had.
Where would it go if not a general condition? Because it does apply to all of them, right?
It could be a little bit,
I mean, there are things that we spell out in each.
yeah, I think it.
In tier
you
one
put
and
at
tier
the
two and
end
tier- oh,
of
okay.
the
Okay.
model law is put at the end, that
Okay.
all, whatever, solar permits, shall-
Just put a box around it too. That would draw attention to it.
Yeah.
a little star. But yeah, so that's what that comment was.
Say at the end, where do you mean?
It's like after M.
So like, for example, well, no, even in the model law, it comes after, they have a bunch of paragraphs after
Oh, so we
tier
could-
3.
Oh, you mean just move it down to the bottom of the
Well, no,
same section?
I think like like we're in section 5, general conditions, then we
Yeah,
move on to
that's what I'm
section
looking-
6. In the model law, they have like a section, 13 at
Yeah,
the very
like
end that
section-
says. I wonder if it makes sense for it to be, if we were gonna move it to its own bigger thing, to call it out, if the right place is after general conditions,
Yeah,
though,
and
because
you
it
could
does
just
apply to.
say validity. All solar permits shall be valid for a
Okay.
blank period of time. And so would that be, did we get its own number?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, so that would be like the new.
It would be the new 6 and then, okay.
Just a suggestion, I mean, that's not legally relevant, obviously, but.
But I think that's important too. We've talked about this quite a bit with, trying to be, we don't, the model solar law was gigantic and extraordinarily wordy, but there is a lot of good stuff in there. So I think what we've tried to do is make this as clear as possible, both for our sake and for the sake of the people who actually have to follow this thing.
Yeah.
And, right, yeah, I think that.
Because to me, like how the general requirements are, it's very bullet pointed, and then you get into validity periods and change of ownership, which I think change of ownership should be beefed up, but those things seem a little bit more than a bullet point to me, which is why I think they should be set aside.
So
Also, it's a separate section right after general conditions.
Yeah.
one for
Sounds good.
validity, and then also one for like change of ownership, do you think? Okay.
I think so.
So we're gonna have, so it'll be validity 6 and then change of ownership 7?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's fine. I think that's,
Well, Mike's
I didn't even
got-
know that you just showed up here, by the way.
Really sneaky. I'm so tiny. The standard building permit has a year until it needs to be renewed anyway, so we just keep that consistent.
Okay, yeah,
So change it from 18 months to 12
1 year.
months, or 1 year? Doesn't make any difference if it's 12 months or 1 year.
At that point, it's up to the code officer whether he'll extend it, and if he does extend it, they have to renew the permit.
Yeah, okay.
So you're saying keep the functioning within 12 months?
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense, actually, yeah. Or they can come back for an extension, okay.
where was that comment in here? Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay,
I noticed that you removed the seeker requirement from general conditions.
Yeah, I agree with you, Natalie, on that one.
maybe not on,
I think we've
Yeah.
gotten, I think actually, we used to always just do a seeker for everything, even though it would be the short or the long. And I think we've gotten away from that, and I think it kind of reminded me of that, and I think this is especially important.
I think we still do it for,
I think actually under the seeker law, and if Brent's still listening, a solar array is under type 2, which doesn't require.
I know, but we were.
That's weird, it was in the model law.
I think it
in the model law.
was Bill Troy that had suggested, maybe you just do it, no matter whether it's required or not. Just to kind of close the issue, and we've been doing that as a matter of course. Whether, because the short one doesn't take that time. And we've just been doing that, we've gotten away from that a little bit, but I think when it comes to something like this, it really is important.
of course it's not.
Fine.
Brent, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess I would react to that as, and maybe I haven't stayed focused enough on what level of project that you're talking about. but an array, are we talking about ground mounted or roof mounted or?
So at this point, in the model solar law, they don't differentiate. They say under one of the general requirements for any tier is seeker review. Well, it says, yeah, it's issuance of permits and approvals by the planning board in this case shall include review pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act.
So I guess, again, I'm sorry, I apologize, I haven't given it enough attention, but are you talking about having a planning board review for roof mounted solar?
Not for residential.
Not for
but yes,
residential,
commercial.
right, yeah. Commercial, yes, residential, no.
It kind of, you would need to be specific if you were gonna require seeker. There's some seeker projects or some solar projects that it wouldn't be necessary. I mean, if you had a large farm, and I'm not sure if you're even trying to accommodate that, but that's when you would likely have a seeker, just because it would be of nature of a site plan review or a site improvement.
Yeah, installation of solar energy arrays on an existing structure is a type 2. It's listed right under the type 2, so it would need no further action.
That's
So
right.
tier 1 wouldn't need it, but potentially a tier 2 or 3.
And so we can put that in.
Tier 1 might need it because tier 1 also includes on-farm solar, which could be more extensive.
Can you require, this goes back to that other, you can't do things that are burdensome for them. I just am curious, there's so many other things that we can't do with them. I wonder if seeker is also one of those things.
We'll look into it.
Well, yeah.
All right, so we'll have ag and markets fighting with other departments.
That's
So
absolutely
all
what.
the departments can have a grudge match.
Yeah, but if we need to, though, we can, as opposed to it being a general requirement for everything, because there are certain things that you wouldn't use it for, we could put it in particular areas.
Yeah.
If we need to.
Well, tier 2 and tier 3 definitely.
Definitely, yeah.
And then can we have some sort of language in tier 1 where,
Well, couldn't it be as easy as, Mike saying this is a type 2 and we can move on?
Right.
Yeah.
Just to check the box.
That's what I usually do in any special permit anyway.
Yeah.
If we need it.
So,
we
because
should
those might
always-
change too, and then,
So do we need to add that in any place, or does Mike cover that? Do we need to add that seeker piece back into tier 2 and tier 3?
or I'm saying just leave it in general, and
In
then
gen-
as we
okay,
go through a
okay.
tier 1, Mike just
Right.
says, oh, you don't even see tier 1.
Right, yeah, okay. Well, I'll put it in general conditions, and we'll see how we can phrase it, and we'll see what that looks like, and we can tweak it if we need to.
Okay, so we talked about ownership changes
There is that piece in there about 30 days, though, that.
within the timeframe
yeah.
to notify. Yeah.
That's under,
I just copied that from the model.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. If you like 30 days, you can change it out. I mean, that was just what they suggested. Is it already required for a building permit?
The architect-
J,
yeah.
yeah. Is that already required?
Where it says, and we
Prior
had
to
talked about
issuance of
this.
a building permit and final approval by the planning board, construction and or site plan.
Doesn't our permit mention it somewhere?
Right, so do you remember this discussion, Mike, when we talked about, prior to the issuance of a permit, final approval, kind of blah, 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 documents must be signed and stamped by a New York State licensed professional engineer or a registered architect?
Yeah, that would be standard anyway for a building permit or anything that's over $20,000.
So that would already be taken care of through the building permit process?
Yeah, I mean, so either you want to be clear and include it, so they're definitely sure to do it, or it's duplicative. I just wanted to point out that it might be duplicative.
I don't mind.
I think it technically is, but I think it's clarity and.
I agree with you, man. Clarity is the first thing. If it's a little bit redundant or verbose, it's more clear than clarity is.
As long as it doesn't contradict.
Yeah.
Right,
As
yeah.
long as it's not contradictory. As long as it's not contradictory.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I keep thinking to myself, okay, if I was somebody who didn't know anything about this and wanted to do this, how, I would feel comfortable having that sentence there.
Hey, we're not getting charged by the word or anything. I wasn't referring to.
Might be, I don't know.
I mean, we want to be clear, not try and be economical with words.
As we discussed with Tier 1 decommissioning plan, with Tier 1, it was my understanding that the board won't even see these, so that 1 and 3 should potentially be removed.
I thought we talked about that last time, yeah.
Yes.
And then I have a comment later that if everyone's gonna need some sort of decommissioning plan, should it also be its own paragraph, so,
But I don't think everyone will need one, right? That's the thing.
but it's included in every tier.
Right, but I think if we take it out of this tier 1 piece, it makes sense in the other tiers.
Right, but the reason that we have it there is because of the on-farm piece, because the on-farm ones can be big, and so they can't, and there's actually the ones that need a decommissioning plan more than any other ones.
The on-farm.
On-farm ones, yeah.
Yep.
I'm gonna just sound like devil's advocate all night long. Can we require a decommissioning plan if they're going to use the, right, this is that question about what's.
I think so. One of the big discussions that we had when I was doing this in the town of Lansing a couple of years ago, was some really strong concerns amongst the farmers that if there isn't a decommissioning plan in place and someone signs a ground lease for solar, when they're done, they're left with all this trash that's all this infrastructure that's no longer functioning, and their soil has been destroyed. So the decommissioning plan was actually for advocating for farms being returned to arable states.
I mean, all defunct equipment's gonna have to be taken away at some point, right?
It would theoretically be, but also, the equipments, they have footers, or they've put in, long rows of gravel, and suddenly you can't plant into gravel, so that state has to be put back into a place where it can be farmed again.
But even an abandoned home or something, it just seems that you have to always take care of this at some point, regardless of which tier it's in. I don't know.
Put something like restored to original condition.
I just wonder, looking, so like one, the planning board may require, right, there's things on there that won't come to the planning board, and that's, so there's the same thing, like number 3, upon any amendment of special permit, there may not be a special permit, right? So as a matter of fact, for on-farm solar, there wouldn't be a special permit, because that is one thing that's burdensome and you can't do, so. I'll take a look at them, and maybe instead of deleting them, maybe there's a way that we can change the language to, kind of, if you look at number 2, we had a similar thing there where it was like, oh, the planning board will set, what if we don't see it? At the discretion of the code enforcement officer. So maybe we can do something similar there, but I'll take a look at those and come up with some suggestion.
Oh, could I just ask a question, kind of backtracking on the part, the very first one where we said at the top of the page where Natalie said this reads awkwardly.
Yep.
When we're talking about accessory buildings and you go to 145, 3, it talks about a solar array. Our language in our code says solar array. And we're talking about solar energy systems. Do we need to worry about that?
Depends how we define, what do we define solar array as?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
And we didn't define solar array.
Right, we don't define that in here, right, in the
law.
current, in the current village code, what do we, what's that?
You got it, and they're look it up.
Yeah, no, it's a race.
Well, maybe I am, now that
Nothing
you're doing
came
it
up.
on your phone.
Do we know where it is?
Oh,
145.
Solar collectors. I don't see anything on solar array, unless it's in a non.
No, it's on page
Chapter.
it's on page 145005 of the code. It's talking about the accessory building. And I'm sorry, it doesn't even say solar arrays.
Solar collectors.
Solar collectors, I've got it screwed up. Yeah.
And wind devices.
Well, there's all these things, but it's like, when we reference the 145.3, have we really referenced appropriately is my point, I guess. And are we?
Accessory or principal categorization as per 145.3.
It's mentioned 3 times in there.
And it's talking about the accessory building setbacks, I'm assuming. That's what I'm understanding.
Definition.
There's, hang on a second, I thought that there was something somewhere that differentiated this from an accessory building.
I don't know if there is. That's, because I've always had trouble with this being.
It doesn't, because the accessory building also includes solar.
Collectors.
Yes.
Yeah.
But is that going to be, if we refer them to this, is that going to cover this?
Well, as long as they're less than 400 square feet.
Accessory or principal categorization.
At any rate, I was.
I don't know if that's a right
Well-
I mean, that's a definition.
There is something about this, hold on.
Where?
He's in the model law.
The model law,
The model, okay. What page?
it's actually in the guidance document.
Uh-oh.
So, does not include a specific definition for, okay, so, I don't, well, maybe this is it, I don't know. The piece that I was looking at said the model law does not include a specific definition for solar energy systems raised on canopy mounting such as solar, oh, that's for like that, so like if you put solar on top of like a carport or something like that. Canopy mounted configurations are included within the definition of roof mounted solar energy systems or ground mounted solar energy systems. I thought that there was something.
Well, I guess what I mean is if we refer them to this part of our code, and then they go to the code and they say, well, this isn't a solar collector, it's a solar energy system. Is somebody going to have trouble with that?
So what I'm
try to
understanding
use
is
it
that
to their
this is-
advantage?
You're intending that this line is to indicate to people that they need to follow the setbacks for accessory
buildings
Right.
within their specific district. I think that is fine, even though it says solar collector, because you're basically telling them, you need to follow the setbacks for accessory building, whatever that is stated in the code for the zone, for the setbacks, that's what you need to follow, not necessarily that.
Okay,
Solar.
I'm just saying.
Well, hold on. But we have here accessory or principal categorization.
That's what I said, it's very awkward, so that's why I'm trying to figure out what was intended.
Okay, so anything over 400 square feet or more than 15 feet tall is considered a principal. So I guess it just depends on what you're putting on your property. If you have too much of a solar panel or solar ground mounted or whatever, it's now suddenly another principal, not an accessory, and so it has a different set of setbacks.
Well, I think that the language, instead of the way it's written, has to say accessory or principal structure, right? Within the underlying zoning, because it would by definition then become a principal, as you said.
But
It has different setbacks.
principal isn't defined in that section either.
No,
It isn't, but what it's, well, actually, okay, it is. So here it says,
principal building.
building accessory is.
Building, comma,
The
principal.
first one, building accessory, anything that's clearly incidental to the principal building, gazebos, storage shelters, blah, 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 that does not exceed 400 square feet in area nor 15 feet in height.
Right.
Carports, barns, solar collectors, windmills, blah, 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 exceeding those limits are considered principal buildings.
Right.
So I guess two things here. So are we basically in D asking people to go and decide whether what they're doing is a principal or an accessory and then act accordingly?
No, whatever they bring to me, and I determine whether it's an accessory or a principal building. At that point, they're subject to whatever setbacks are for that district.
So we're basing it more on the size.
Right.
So I think that should be made more clear.
Yeah. Well, I took a note to fix that anyway, because either way, it's awkward, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Clearly, our confusion is,
Yes. Again, we want this to be clear for
Demonstrating
us,
that.
us and them, and if it's not clear for us right now, then it's not clear for them, yeah, so anyone who has to follow this, so. Maybe I'll send Natalie
Yeah,
something,
we'll
we
work
can,
through it.
yeah, specific to that.
Okay, I think we're on page 156.
Yes.
So there's a reference to, I added buffering plan to 7A2, because then in B1, you said that the buffering plan is subject to board approval, but never actually require a buffering plan.
Right.
So that's why I added it there. And then I don't know the answer to my comment on B3 about the 8 inches, but I know that that was plucked from the model law. And the model law is only ground mounted. So you moved it over here where this could still be roof mounted for commercial. And I don't know if the size of that would permit an 8-inch.
no, like a flat roof mount would have to be.
Flat roof is different.
Yeah, that we've got, yeah.
This is not a pitched roof, and then I don't know how many commercial buildings have pitched roofs, so how often it's gonna be applicable, I don't know, but.
Well, I think we talked about this, but there are some small buildings, like, I was trying to think of one. Like, what about some of the, like, you know, the dental, Dr. Nurse, or some of those are commercial areas, right? It's possible that I suppose they could put in solar panels.
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that that was thought of, because I know in the very early discussions, we talked about, oh, maybe if it's a larger solar array on top of a larger roof, 8 inches will not be sufficient for a grade.
But on a pitched roof, it's probably fine, because pitched roofs
I
are
imagine it would be.
meant to be more residential scale.
Yeah, like that whole former Audrey Edelman campus too, don't they have pitched roofs? I don't know. Some of them are sort of smaller.
Yeah, most commercial buildings are flat roofs anyway.
So maybe that one's okay then?
Yeah.
Okay,
Just comments.
yeah,
So we're gonna leave the 8 inches?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Will the decommissioning plan requirements be different for every tier? This is different than tier 3.
I think we should be consistent. Oh.
Tier 3 was basically a copy and paste from the model law,
Yeah.
but if they're gonna be different, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're aware of the difference.
I can't remember what we talked about. I know that we talked about, when we had the discussion about decommissioning plans, we talked about them in terms of all 3 tiers. How obviously for something in tier 1, it would be extraordinarily less robust than, right, something that ends up in tier 3.
Because you go through in tier 3, not to jump ahead, but like what should be included in a
Right.
decommissioning plan? So if you're then asking for a decommissioning plan potentially in 2, I think for the purposes of being very clear, that should also be listed so that they don't have to go then searching, well, what do they mean by decommissioning plan?
Or do we define decommissioning plan somewhere else in the document?
Or do you make it its own section like we do in the beginning with ownership and whatever other one we added?
I think it would rise to that level.
Yeah. So it should be potentially its own other section, and then
Sure.
under that section be, we
We
can
can-
figure out how the
If it
tiers
needs
are
to be
worded.
different, yeah, if it needs to be the same, great, if it needs to be different, yeah, okay.
So I think the
So we'll make that a new
decommissioning plan
section.
of 157, page 157 is the best wording.
Right.
And gives the most information to the applicant as to what's expected of them, with the note that there is no appendix 4 currently.
That's from the model law.
Yeah, yeah,
They have it in there. They actually have a template. So
Okay.
yes, we'll want whatever template we come up with for a decommissioning plan, whether we use theirs or come up with our own, that's what it should reference. We can.
Small point, but I think it's just a matter of usage. I think there should be the required amount of the financial bond.
Where are you?
I'm on subsection 3 at the top of 157, first line.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes.
They'll be taken out anyway.
Oh, that'll move into. Well, either way, yeah, I don't want to copy and paste that one then. Okay.
And then I think my only other larger point, because this becomes more to the model law, is if you want tier 3 in all zoning districts, because Sundance Farm is low density.
Right, we had
residential.
talked about that at a couple times, so
All
all
non-residential?
non-residential zones?
Yeah, I think, and then, well, so if somebody can always come for a variance, right?
Yeah.
I think non-residential, I was trying to think, do you say all commercial or do you say non-residential?
I would say not.
I'd say non-residential,
Non-residential is, yeah.
more clear.
I
as
was
to what-
gonna say that, yeah, I thought so too, but I thought, oh, I don't know, maybe that, okay, non-residential, right?
Yeah,
Not non-residential?
all non-residential zones.
Where does that leave us?
With meeting in appendix.
High, low, medium.
Yeah, but I mean, like in the code.
Yeah, I know, yeah, I
To see
mean,
if there's any large swaths where it might.
don't think
then
so.
go.
Oh, what about a planned development area, though? Do we want to leave planned development areas? Because they could be, we might want it in some.
would a PDA though, if, say that we came up with a PDA, would a PDA allow us to?
Yeah, because you're not.
Right,
You're
because.
creating your own zone.
Right, you're creating your own zone, you don't have to take the underlying zoning.
Yeah.
It's really, yeah,
Yeah,
so, right.
So
that
it's
would be
okay
an
to
issue.
leave that in, isn't it?
yes.
Okay,
And you can always say no.
yes, exactly.
You want to? No, okay. Comment 10 there about the appendix. Yes,
Yeah.
one will be added, yes, it will be taken from the model law. I'll grab the one from the model law, and when I make some edits and send this back out, I'll attach it there and call it appendix A probably, because it's not 4, maybe 1.
Yeah, one.
Yeah, just so everyone can see what it looks like. I'm sure we'll want to change it, kind of like we did some things with the solar permit, but that's fine. It at least gives us something to work off of. And that's an appendix, so that's not actually part of the local law that would get passed, so the appendix can go and change more readily.
And then my last comment, just, I don't know, could tier 3 be roof mounted?
Yeah.
She's on 158. Could a tier 3 system be roof mounted?
Is it, are we worried about size? It would,
I'm just worried, I'm just asking if we need to include details about pitched and flat roofs.
Well, sure, I mean, the mall's got a lot of roof area that theoretically would surpass the tier 2, right?
it's about kilowatts, I thought.
You have to go back and look now. What were you gonna say, Jim?
My thought would be, I guess, following up in yours, my thought would be to leave it in there, because we don't know what the future's necessarily gonna bring. So by having it in there, then the issue is addressed ahead of time.
It seems that, I mean, it's only about nameplate capacities in many cases.
Yeah, you absolutely could have a tier 3 that is roof mounted. Because it would, tier 2, because tier 1, we know what that is. Tier 2 is commercial ground mounted or roof mounted with a nameplate capacity up to 1/4 megawatt. You can easily fit more than that on top of them all right
That's
now.
just me knowing nothing
So,
about solar
yeah.
panels, so.
Yes.
Just double checking. Okay, that was all.
But do we need to enhance that in any way?
It is different than what?
It is.
It is different.
That's missing the 8-inch pieces.
I was gonna say, it's not consistent with the rest.
I would still, I would at least, at the very least, add the 8-inch piece back in to keep it consistent. I also don't imagine that you're gonna, that would be a
You wouldn't have 1/4 megawatt.
pretty big roof-mounted pitched roof solar array. But But, again, like Jim said.
You never know.
Never know.
Somebody builds the biggest A-frame in upstate New York. Okay.
Guinness World Record.
Okay. Any other comments on?
Yeah, yeah, the last two things, which are usually pretty, because I started looking at this at the end, and then I was looking at language, and I thought, well, there are bigger issues here that I didn't make changes, we'll address. And I didn't do them in words, I just did them by hand.
I'm gonna make sure I can read them this time. I got this. Yes, got it. Thank you.
Make sure Natalie can read it.
Once, no, I'm just joking.
I have very bad handwriting.
Oh, so is mine. Mine's awful. I type for a living.
But I just want Lisa to note my header, with the date and NSF Redline 2 Baker to be very clear about when the red lines happen.
I name every file. Date.
But Lisa doesn't seem to appreciate my efforts. It's fine.
I'm with Lisa on this one.
I can put it in all the places. Okay.
Get this next time.
Yeah, so take a look. And if you have if you have any comments on it, if we could get it back before next time, that would be, you could just email Pat if you find things on it.
Yep.
And then Pat can provide an updated copy.
I can even tell you my one comment right now. I hear it.
Next item on the agenda, trustee report. Next item on the agenda, right, there was no trustee meeting, right, that got canceled, okay. Other business, Brian,
I don't have any business.
I'll come back to you. Jim?
I don't have any.
Just that I'm was excited to see Oak Crest.
Yes.
Complete and smooth, and now I kind of want to go roller skating on it because it's so good looking. And I can't wait till Cuba Heights Road is done too.
Okay.
Good nothing.
Lisa?
No, nothing.
Mike, anything you want to give us updates on?
Just let you know, your next meeting will probably, if we get things settled, we'll have the Beers Cluster subdivision here. I'll get together, I'll go over things with you tomorrow, just to make sure just so we can get this going. And I'd like to see this somehow either get approved or whatnot this next meeting, because we do have a lot of items coming up. Your next meeting, you'll have a presentation about the PDA. I've had a lot of people call and ask, a lot of questions about that, trying to get information about it. I just mentioned to them that it'd probably be wise to come to the last planning board meeting of the month, because they'll get the full review. Basically what the trustees had that first time you went through everything. You might have missed that one though, didn't you, Drew?
I think I've been there, at least 2 of those, max.
Yeah, I think Drew.
Yeah, and then, so he'll go through everything. Also, you'll have, we better have Eric this next time. If he doesn't get the mailings out, I will get them out. We need to address that situation.
So I would say, at the next meeting, let's plan on opening the public hearing. And if we need to send the mailings out, we can send the mailings out, right, to ensure that there's enough time for us to open up the public hearing on that day.
Yep.
So I would say, let's do that.
Okay, and on top of that, I don't know when the project that's on that land on Uptown Road is coming, but I would imagine that'll be following right behind. So it's gonna be busy for you guys this fall and winter.
It's okay, some of the other things slow down during the winter, so.
I think you're going to have a crowd at the next meeting, because I'm hearing rumblings from people that aren't happy. So,
It's a good thing we have Zoom, we wouldn't be able to fit everybody in here.
I know, you're going to have to put more chairs, you're going to probably have to put more chairs in here.
Now that we have Zoom, we'll do the same thing we do at the law school, put a big TV in another room, and we'll throw Zoom up there, and it's the overflow room.
Some people like to be here in person, though.
And that's all I've got.
Better show up early.
Yeah, parking.
Get a parking spot in that. Seats. Oh, we've had a full house in here before. We've had, what, 3 or 4 rows of chairs back there.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Okay, anything else? Nope. Any questions for Mike about projects other than ones he's mentioned? Anything, have you even met them all? They're moving right along on stuff there.
Looks kind of nice, doesn't it? Oh, I mean, they did a nice job with the front face there, with adding all the windows and stuff.
They'll be looking to open up their first 2 sections here.
What are you talking about? I didn't hear what you're saying.
About Cayuga Med at the mall.
The Cuba Medical Mall? Is that what-
Oh, good.
Other than Target, it's
Medical Mall.
Target and Cayuga Medical.
We need some people to put some restaurants in there, now that Cuba Medical is gonna.
Ocala does well there, I love it.
Yeah, they do really well.
Yeah, and good for them, because I remember when it opened, I was like, see how that goes. Yeah, no, it goes well, apparently.
It took them like an extra year to open.
Yeah.
We just got a really nice review in the Ithaca Times.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, and
That's what it said.
if you do want to go to the mall on Saturday, there's a derby bout at the Old Navy.
There's what?
Roller derby bout.
Oh, right, that's right, I forgot about the roller derby.
Navy.
Oh, is that where they
So
are in there?
roller derbies in the Old Navy still? Okay.
Yeah.
I know somebody who's like referees that is very into roller derby, but I don't know where it's
No,
done.
Wendy does roller derby.
Oh, really?
Wendy
She's one of the
I'll ask you what her nickname.
participants or?
Another reason not to mess with her.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'll show up, yeah.
My daughter does roller derby. So
Okay,
I have nothing.
no,
You know, I will say, keep an eye out for, I know, Lorraine, you mentioned them, maybe I think, lights that are on buildings that are too bright. This is prime migration time, and so it's actually especially important during the September, October, November months, to make sure that any lights that are on are either shielded or aren't going to cause disruption to migratory birds. And now that it's getting darker earlier, keep an eye out for those.
with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:32 PM. Motion by Pat,
I'll second.
second by Jim, all in favor?
Oh, you should remind everybody, don't forget to keep filling out your.
Oh, yeah, I thank you, I was gonna say that too, yeah, your timesheet for, yeah.
Well, I wrote the Times down.
I have it open on my computer right now, because otherwise I'll forget.
So are we only doing it for the month of September?
Yes.
Yes.
Because this is not the